Yes.
You will back
yes,
up.
Yes, you will.
You will back up.
She's got a pen in her hand.
No, get it off of me!
Get down on the ground.
Get off!
Down the pen. Down the pen.
Get off of me!
Settle down.
Ah! Get the fuck! Ah! No!
On the 17th of April 2023, Orlando Police Department officers responded to Gate 24 of Orlando International Airport after a passenger reported a woman screaming and acting erratically in the public terminal. The woman, who we will call Sherry, was waiting for a departing flight when officers arrived. What followed was a 9-minute encounter that would ultimately result in 4 criminal charges under Florida law. Officers immediately employed a hands-off approach, keeping distance, attempting verbal contact, and maintaining a de-escalation posture fully consistent with Orlando Police Department operational standards. Under Florida statute, Section 877.03. Breach of the peace. Any individual who commits acts that occasion a breach of the peace in a public place may be lawfully arrested on a first-degree misdemeanor charge. Because this alleged offense occurred in the officer's direct presence, Florida statute, Section 901.15 authorized a warrantless arrest, the moment officers personally observed the disorderly conduct firsthand.
Hello.
Don't touch me.
We're not touching him, ma'am.
Leave me alone.
What's going on?
No.
Hey, I spoke with your husband earlier. I was the one to speak.
You spoke with him already.
I know, so are you on the phone with him?
Don't touch me. Leave me alone.
Are you... Can we talk? Ma'am, don't, please.
Leave me alone. Do not come
Don't touch that.
Leave me alone.
Okay.
No, I am not stopping. You will back the fuck away from me.
You need to settle down so we can talk.
I'm sorry, baby. No. I am getting away from the people.
Over there.
Sorry, baby.
Over there.
No, leave me
Okay,
alone.
ready? Okay.
Do not touch me. Do not touch me.
Yeah.
No.
So,
Do not touch me. Do not come near me.
excuse us.
Do not come near me.
Excuse us. Excuse us. Oh, sorry.
Do not come near me. Do not come near me.
All right, you need to
My
settle
hands
down.
are up.
You need
Don't
to settle.
touch me.
You need to settle down.
Don't touch me.
You need to settle down.
No.
Sherry repeatedly shouts, "Do not touch me and leave me alone." Under the Fourth Amendment, a person may refuse consent to a search, but that right does not extend to physically obstructing officers with probable cause to detain. The lead officer attempts to establish rapport by referencing a prior conversation with Sherry's husband. This is a textbook de-escalation technique, and it reflects the professionalism documented in the officer's overall grade of B+. As Sherry's resistance intensifies, an officer announces, quote, "She's got a pen in her hand." Under Graham v. Connor 490 U. 386, decided in 1989, the reasonableness of force is judged from the officer's perspective at the scene. Graham v. Connor identifies 3 key factors: the severity of the crime, whether the subject poses an immediate threat to officers or others, and whether the subject is actively resisting or attempting to flee. At the 2-minute 10-second mark, an officer clearly states, quote, "Stop biting me." This single act transforms the legal landscape entirely, elevating the encounter from a misdemeanor situation to a felony arrest.
I will not settle down.
Yes.
You will back
Yes,
up.
you will.
You will back up.
She's got a pen in her hand.
No, get it off of me.
Get down on the ground.
Get
Down the pen. Down the pen.
Get off of me.
Settle down.
Get the fuck. No. Get off of me. Get off. Get off. Get off. No.
Stop biting me.
Stop. No. Get off of me. Oh, no, please. Please stop it. Please stop.
Roll on your stomach.
No. Get off of me. Get off of me. Get
Roll over. You're making it hard on yourself.
off
Back it.
me. Get the fuck off of me.
If you're about to get tased.
Get off!
Son, do you want to roll?
No.
We gotta pick the time. Come on.
Stop! Get off of me!
Stop it.
No!
Stop.
Good job.
Somebody help me! Somebody help me! Get off of me! Now! Right now! Why did you let them do this to you, baby? Get off! No! my God.
We're gonna need a case car.
No, please don't put me in a cage car. Please get off of me. Get off
Can I?
of me now. No.
Stop.
No, please.
Stop. All right, you need to settle down.
I know you have
need
a
to settle.
family too. Just don't
settle
do
down.
it to me.
All right.
I have kids. I have beautiful kids.
Get off here.
Please leave me alone.
Just settle down and we'll get everything
Please
go
leave
for
me
you.
alone.
Alright, we're gonna.
Hello, lady. We're gonna sit you up.
Please don't call me little lady.
Okay.
Okay, well, you can help us with your legs, okay?
Is this your shoe over here too?
Alright, sit down in the
Sit in the
wheelchair.
chair.
I don't wish to sit in
We want you to sit
We'd like
down.
you to sit down, please.
Sit down. Sit down. Please. Come on, sit down. Sit down. Please sit down.
Please just sit down.
You want to get her feet up down?
No, don't touch me.
We're not touching
Please,
her.
do you have a family?
We're just getting the lift up. You can put
No,
your
no,
feet
no,
down if
no,
you want.
no. Don't let them take me, please.
Come on.
Please.
Come on, we can take
No, please don't let me. Why are all these men on me and nobody's trying to help me?
Ma'am, just
We
put
are
your feet
helping
here.
you.
No, you're not.
Just put your feet up
This
here,
is
ma'am.
really.
Foot up.
Oh,
Is there other sneakers?
I already. Don't touch me, please. Stop it. Why were you? Please don't let them take me.
You got it.
Does she have any other family members here?
Just hold on to her. Hold on to her.
Got it.
Her.
So there's some backstory.
No, get off of me.
We got the back,
There is
Herbie.
a backstory.
Herbie, you hang on to her. I got the back.
Family. Oh my God. Why are you recording me?
23, I guess. Go left.
Please.
Just go left.
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is happening to you, baby.
Excuse us.
Come on, sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
No.
24.
No.
Can you make some room?
No. Get off of me.
Under Florida Statute Section 784.07, intentionally striking a law enforcement officer constitutes battery on a law enforcement officer, a third-degree felony carrying a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. The officer's subsequent escalation to a physical takedown is fully justified under Florida Statute Section 776.05, which expressly authorizes the use of force reasonably necessary to effect a lawful arrest. Sherry's continued kicking and struggling during transport adds further counts under Florida Statute Section 843.01, resisting with violence, a third-degree felony on top of Section 843.02. Resisting without violence, officers request a medical stretcher with soft restraints rather than forcing Sherry into a patrol vehicle. This decision reflects Crisis Intervention Team protocol and raises Baker Act considerations under Florida Statute Section 394.463. The Baker Act allows officers to initiate an involuntary examination when a person appears to have a mental illness and poses a danger to themselves or others. A standard Sherry's behavior at the airport gate arguably met.
If she gets off, we're just going to agree.
No, you can do it now. Yes.
Okay.
Right now.
Let's walk down.
I am not walking.
Ma'am, relax.
I'm sorry, baby. This is happening to you. You have
Going this way, folks. Excuse us. Man, stop, please. Coming through here.
help me, please.
Thank you.
No! Please!
Come on now, you're welcome.
Please don't take me
Coming through here.
away. No! Ow! Ow!
Stop kicking.
No, please!
Come on, man.
No!
Come on, come on.
No! Ouch! Help me! Ow!
Good. Come on, man.
No! I will not!
Come on,
Come on,
man.
we're almost there.
Come on, man. Come on, come on, come on. Come on. Come on, man. Come on, we gotta go.
No! Why have you only been doing this for me?
Yes.
Can you check my neck over here?
Please don't
Excuse me. No, that's...
No! No!
You got a bite mark. No, it's not broken. It's swollen.
We're gonna be to your left.
Been bite mark.
Was that a bite?
Yes, you've been on the neck.
Sit her down.
No! Do not!
We have to do this. All right. Bring her out.
So we got it.
I'm breaking my back!
Nobody's breaking anything.
Help me!
Grab her arms. You guys ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Up she goes. And get in front.
Ow! Ow, my arms! Please put me down. I will walk now. Ah!
said.
Telecom Oscar 992, 4 hour
I
unit
help
check.
you up now, and now you're gonna walk with us.
Get off of me.
Grab her leg. Grab her leg.
I'll talk to you when we get down there, okay? All right, ma'am. I'll talk to you when we get down there.
Bad idea. We're gonna have to put her on the stretch.
Okay, they're not. All right, here, back in.
A full cocktail.
Yep. AMR still coming?
No.
You want them to look?
Do not give me any drugs. I don't use any drugs.
If you're gonna sedate her, can we get a stretcher up here then?
No. No, I don't use any drugs.
Here and they're ready to do
They're trying to
I'll
sedate
get the
me.
stretcher up.
We're gonna put soft restraints on you, okay? We're gonna put soft cuffs on you.
Can we do soft restraint on her?
I know.
And then one cuff to the gurney. And make sure you get clearance on that.
Yes, will do,
Hey,
sir.
just come pick me up in the truck.
Thank you.
All right.
No, please don't take me in there. Please, please take me. Take me to the doctor. All right. I put my arm inside of this. Have you? Let me just keep it right out there, okay?
I'll be,
We put a non-intubated cap mill on the back of the stretcher.
Okay.
I'm gonna be in there with you. Hold on.
We're gonna put you in this seat.
Okay.
That way you're out of sight, and it may keep things from getting. She's pretty. She's
I'll
pretty
just sit there. I'm just gonna be.
Yep.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.
Following the incident, Sherry was formally charged with 4 offenses: disorderly conduct under Section 877.03, battery on Leo under Section 784.07, resisting without violence under 843.02, and resisting with violence under 843.01. As with all persons charged with a crime in the United States, Sherry is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Case outcome remains unknown at the time of this analysis. Sherry received a subject grade of D. The officers earned a grade of B+. While de-escalation was genuinely attempted and force was legally proportional, the use of the phrase "little lady" and uncertainty around Baker Act documentation prevented a higher score. The first lesson from this footage: physical resistance in a public space, especially an airport, will always escalate your legal exposure. What began as a misdemeanor became multiple felony charges the moment biting occurred. The second lesson: if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, ask officers directly to contact a crisis intervention team specialist. Invoking that request verbally is far more effective than physical resistance. The third lesson: under Tennessee versus Garner and Graham versus Connor, courts do not second-guess officers using proportional force against active resistance. The law is designed to protect officers, and it will be applied. Let us know in the comments if there is a police interaction or legal topic you would like us to analyze. If you found this content informative, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We will see you in the next one.